Equality is a lie. Yes, I said it. And many politicians have to hear it from you because they failed to admit it. Everybody talks equality this, inequality that, how we can solve this problem or that. Here in this video, we will address why equality, as presented by politicians from all stripes, is a lie, why achieving it is impossible. And if you stay till the end of the video, we also will discuss the one and main reason why inequality exists. So, before we get started, I'm Krom Chuchev. This is my channel that has my name. We are applying the principles of science, law, linguistics, and economics and philosophy when we address complex topics. So if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe or post a comment because there will be many other interesting videos just like that. So without further ado, let's get started. Everyone talks about equality. First thing to know, what do we mean? Many people would agree, equality before the law. How we apply the laws without taking into consideration anything else except the individual and the character and the evidence they bring. However, what happens when we apply law equally to everyone? There are people who don't like the outcome. And if you are watching the video right now in 2022 in November, just a couple of days ago we had a Supreme Court case argued, which colloquially is known as the Harvard case, in which one of the sides goes in great lengths arguing why they should not be applying rules and principles equally to all the applicants. Why? Because if they do, they seem not to be getting the outcomes they want. So even though equality of law is actually the one that you could kind of bring into existence, because you can say, here is the test score, you pass it, you get admitted, you don't pass it, you don't. People don't like the outcome. And that was the one and only type of equality where theoretically you could approach it. What's the other kind that politicians like to talk about? Equality of outcome. Well, no matter how they spin it, equality of outcome is not possible, and they come with various reasons why. But needless to say, if you go to the casino, do you expect everyone who plays the roulette table to get the same number like everyone else? Or do you expect everyone who plays the roulette to get the same outcome in the end of the session? No. In real life, there are a lot of things that are out of our control and subject to random influences and random events. So we cannot foolproof the universe, you cannot eliminate randomness. And because random does not treat us equally, then equality of outcome just in that regard will be impossible. But we're going to talk a little more about that later, because there is much more than random outcomes that prevent the equality of outcome. Now, a biggie that comes is the next type of, quote, equality, which is the equality of opportunity. And even though it sounds good, there are two problems with that. The first problem is there is an implied burden that somebody called society, that means you, me, and everyone else, can assume the role of God and invent a situation when all participants receive equal starting chances. Why is this impossible? Let's look at a simple example such as college admissions. One way to admit students is just based on test scores. Pure and fair. Everyone knows what the cutoff was, and the candidates know for themselves, I made the cut, I did not. However, as we know, not everyone likes the outcomes. As a result, over time, admissions offices decided to come with more and more criteria into the mix, so-called holistic approach, which ignores the full effect of test scores, and instead they start adding other factors. Now, Let's take race for a moment out of the question. We know race is one of the favorite subjects to certain politicians, but even if we ignore that thing out, sorry to keep the conversation simple, we can still drive the point in. What's the problem of any holistic approach when you judge people to level the playing field? The problem is there are too many factors that play in one's life. And what do you add in those factors? So you had the test scores, you had the school. Now you can say socioeconomic factors. Were they poor, therefore they are more deserving, or were they rich, therefore they are less deserving? Did they overcome an illness? Did they do community service? Are they a single child? And so on and so on. The thing is, where do you draw the line? And people say, that's a strawman argument. It is not, because there are practically infinite number of factors that play a role. And deciding not to include the next factor is what brings the issue. If you look at any candidate, you can imagine that their value to a college or university could be presented like a mathematical series that has one term and another term and another term, each term smaller than the previous, but still a non-zero sum. And so you have those series and you have to sum all the terms in order to see which candidate is more deserving if you want to play God. God is all-knowing, God is omnipotent, God should know absolutely everything. So if you want to play God, you need to include all the terms, all the infinite number of them. And trying to do so, you have to do the cutoff somewhere, so you're imprecise nonetheless. And also you don't know what you're cutting off because candidates value different aspects of their life differently, so they can put one thing and omit another. And similarly, admissions officers, who are humans and who are fallible, also have to come with their own idea of how much value they put to one criteria over another. So no matter what, you cannot fully assess a single candidate because there are infinitely, for practical purposes, de facto infinite number of considerations to make, and your time and resources are limited. So in the end, you are trying to correct for things that you do not fully know. And instead of sticking to the pure method, which was simply test results, you're going to consider outside factors, knowing that you're not playing with a full deck. Therefore, you never give proper compensation for differences in opportunity. You just think so, like a half-blind deity trying to dispense justice where you should rather have stuck to something plain, simple, and fair. Now, finally, there is another type of equality/inequality that I don't hear people talking about, but I think often this is what they mean. And there is evidence for that. The equality, let's call it, of existence. How things come out for you personally. Because what do we know from our friends, neighbors, and some people who talk on television and so on? Are they truly against inequality, or do they just not like how they rank with respect to something? For example, ladies who march for equality, do they give equal opportunity to short guys, or to fat guys, or to poor guys when it comes to dating? Probably not. People who made it in a decent college and they march for equality, are they willing to give their seat and go to a community college instead? And so forth and so on. And this brings us to the next point. Why do politicians lie when they talk about equality and when they say inequality is such a problem, we have to tackle it? Few points. First, many of them just don't know what they're doing. Those who know what they're talking about don't want to tell you the truth for various reasons. They may be afraid that voters are just not going to understand why equality is impossible, and they are afraid that they get judged. Just like I don't know how many people will understand what's presented in this video, but I hope the more the merrier. Now, why equality is impossible? Let's just look at something simple, like a bunch of particles. Let's say just atoms or something like that. Pick your poison. If you have studied science in school, you know about the temperature scale and you have heard about 0 Kelvin and the absolute, or so-called absolute zero. So what happens as we approach 0 Kelvin? All particles have no excess energy and they all fall on the lowest possible energy level. So here you have equality. If you can achieve that, that is, all particles on the bottom level, they're all equal. What happens when the temperature starts going up? Some of the particles have excess energy and they start occupying higher energy levels. You introduce inequality. Once particles start breaking off away from the bottom level, you have some particles with very little energy, sometimes with more. And as you keep adding more and more energy to that group of particles, you have some that have quite a lot, others that have in the middle, and others that have not. But never you get a situation where all particles have the same energy, which is something other than the absolute bottom zero. So there is no such thing that, let's say, at 100 degrees or at 500 degrees, that all particles exactly have occupied the same energy level, or they behave and act the same. No, you have some that are much less energetic and some that are much more. And there is something called Boltzmann distribution, which you can look it up. And in the Boltzmann distribution that people study in physical chemistry, you can see that as you add more and more energy to the particles, so that energy is equally accessible to all the particles, but as you see, some get more, some get less, and the majority are exactly in the middle. And the more and more energy you put into the system, the more and more the spread becomes wider and wider, and the difference between the haves and the have-nots becomes greater and greater. But what does also happen? The average energy of the particles or the system keeps going up. What does this remind us of? Human development, money, economics. The more and more society becomes rich, the greater and greater you have the gap between the haves and have-nots, and the higher up the average moves. And here somebody will say, okay, can we do something? If the society is so wealthy, how can't we come and make everyone equal? Well, you can't equally judge two students on college applications if you try to look at anything other than the pure test scores. How much more so in humans in a full society, and who is going to enforce that? But that's not the main issue. If you look at the Boltzmann distribution, where in nature you have seen all the particles have the same energy level once the system has any energy to speak up. It just does not happen. What is interesting here to notice is politicians never focus on the improvement of the average and how society is getting richer. On average, all citizens get better off. They do not focus on what citizens have gained. They like to focus on what citizens want to have, but they do not yet have, and often in a malevolent way they are trying to present as if it is somebody else's fault. And here is why we have a lot of the social problems of today. But talking about inequality, there is another thing to do. Even if we get rid of the perceived wealth, we still have inequality. How come? I know once a guy said, oh, I love going to the nudist camp because there everyone is equal. No, there not everyone is equal, not at all. Even with the quotes of, some people are more attractive than others, some people are better spoken than others, and some people just appear less threatening than others. That already brings enough of differences of outcomes. Also, whoever thinks that social class does not appear is just vastly mistaken. It takes just a minute of talking with somebody, and people can start figuring out who fits where, and how, and people can start forming groups based on mutual interests, liking, and so on. Even if you put everyone in prison and eliminate opportunity and agency from people whatsoever, there is still a hierarchy that will form among the prisoners. So even with absence of economic system and any material goods to distribute around, again, equality is not possible. And this brings us to the final part. What is the cause of inequality? What is it that we need to eliminate if you want to reduce or eliminate equality? And to give you the drum roll, it is one word. And no, it is not capitalism. It is one word, and it is opportunity. Every time you have opportunity, you have generation of inequality. The more opportunity there is of any kind in a group of people, the more unequal the outcomes will be. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine a special kind of school that kids have absolutely no outside information. So the only thing they hear, the only information they get is what the school provides. And the school runs an experiment, and all they teach is first grade stuff. So what is the best thing a kid can do? Learn the first grade stuff. So the difference between the top and the bottom will be somebody at the bottom would have done absolutely nothing, and somebody on the top would have mastered first grade material, and that's it. Now, what if the school teaches not just first but also second grade stuff? Then the difference between the top and the bottom is twice as big. You have the bottom is somebody who hasn't done absolutely anything, and the top is somebody who has mastered completely the second grade stuff. Extend that, let's say, to 11th grade. The bottom, somebody hasn't done absolutely anything, and the top, somebody who has absolutely mastered the 11th grade. As you see, the more and more opportunity you provide, the more you expand how far the maximum goes, the greater the spread among the participants and the greater the distribution of outcomes, therefore the greater the inequality. So this is why, if let's say you're a parent or even a student, and when you see teachers who start talking, or even officials who start talking about eliminating inequality in school, especially if they mean inequality of performance, just raise your hand and stop them right on their tracks. The more opportunity your school district provides, the greater the inequality of outcome among the kids would be. And it is just inevitable. And actually that's something that some teachers and administrators have caught on. So what do? If we provide more opportunity, we increase inequality. So let's start taking opportunity away. There were kings in ancient times that wanted the peasants to be uneducated because they were easy to control. Now we have school officials who want to remove advanced placement classes, who want to remove the gifted kids programs, and they come with one excuse or another. But what they're doing is they're eliminating opportunity, hoping that they will bring down the possibility for upper achievement, and thus they want to narrow the difference between the top performance and the bottom by making it impossible for top performance to perform better. Of course, now with the age of the internet, these kids who are top performers, chances are they will seek information elsewhere. And so what these officials are actually doing, they're harming those kids that are not exactly top performers but would have still benefited from the top classes. And it is kind of frightening those, because the same people who like to call others Nazis actually apply what the Nazis wanted to do in Poland when they say that Poles should not know math more than certain grade because they should be a Serbian nation. And here we have parents who vote for and support officials and politicians who want their own children to not be taught beyond certain grade level, because this somehow reduces inequality. Yes, it reduces inequality, but the cost you pay is that all the kids know less than what they should. And here is another point, which is kind of to the side. If your kid is not among the best performing kids, actually your kid one day will have to trade for the services provided by the best performing kids who will be doing jobs that your kid probably will not. And in a functioning, highly complex society, we do our part and you expect others to do their part, so we take advantage of what they do and we give them what we do through the free market. So if your kid, for example, is unlikely to be a doctor, then you even more depend on other kids becoming doctors so that one day they can treat your kid. So never allow politicians and school officials to dumb down the curriculum in your district. And again, opportunity is what brings inequality. To eliminate inequality or to reduce it, you must eliminate opportunity.